Story 1. I ran an Airbnb rental for many years before calling it quits. The constant pressure of managing bookings while juggling my day job became too much. The appeal of short-term rentals over traditional leasing was obvious. You could earn way more money if guests kept coming. Our place sat in a popular vacation spot, making Airbnb perfect for us. My wife and I started with high hopes, but as bookings poured in, the workload exploded. We had to coordinate everything perfectly, arrange cleaning crews between guests, and answer messages around the clock. Everything ran smoothly for 2 years, until we welcomed what seemed like a young couple to our house. Like always, when they showed up, I sent them the door code via text. I rarely meet guests face to face. Once they confirmed they were settled in, I relaxed for the evening. Most guests barely communicate beyond basic check-in and check-out messages, maybe asking simple questions about the house. That's usually the extent of our conversations. But around 9 at night, just as I was heading to bed, my phone buzzed with a message from the young man. He said he'd call me in a minute, and sure enough, he did. The text alone made my stomach drop, but his words still caught me off guard. He claimed the water had stopped working in the house. I apologized immediately, though I couldn't understand how that was possible. No one should have to stay somewhere without running water. So I knew I had to fix this right away. I asked if I could swing by quickly to assess the problem, so I could get a repair person there first thing in the morning. He agreed politely, and I drove over within minutes. Pulling into the driveway, I spotted 2 cars parked there. This struck me as strange, but not alarming. They were supposedly a young couple on a one-night vacation, so why would they need 2 separate vehicles? I figured maybe friends were visiting, which technically wasn't allowed, but I wasn't too bothered by it. I approached the front door, knocked briefly, then entered the code and stepped inside. The house felt eerily quiet. I expected them to greet me, but nobody was in sight. I probably should have looked for them first, but exhaustion made me want to solve this water issue quickly. My first instinct was to check the main water valve for leaks or flooding, so I headed down to the basement. Everything looked normal. No water damage or obvious problem. I was puzzled, but when I played with the valve, water immediately started flowing again. Turning it further, I realized someone had manually shut it off completely. I stood in that basement for another minute, trying to make sense of why anyone would do that. Then an uncomfortable feeling crept over me, especially since I hadn't even seen the guests when I entered. I couldn't imagine anyone else turning off that water except them, which meant they deliberately brought me here, maybe hoping for a discount due to the inconvenience. I decided to leave immediately and try calling them from my car to be safe. I stood up and started toward the stairs when I heard the basement door creak open, followed by multiple sets of heavy footsteps coming down. When they reached the bottom, 3 men stood before me. "Is it fit?" one asked, his voice matching the phone caller, though all these men looked much older than the young guest I thought was staying here. I told him it should work now and that the valve must have tightened by itself. I was trying not to blame anyone since the whole situation made me incredibly uncomfortable. I just wanted out of that basement and away from these guys. They all stood there staring at me without speaking. "Well, let me know if you need anything else," I said, walking between them toward the stairs. They remained motionless, watching me navigate around them. But as I passed the 3rd man closest to the stairs, I caught sight of a gun tucked into his waistband. That made me panic a little, and I rushed up the stairs more quickly. They didn't follow. They stayed in the basement as I hurried out the door and drove away. When I got home, I woke my wife and explained everything. She convinced me to call the police to check on. These weren't the people we thought were staying there, and the whole situation felt too strange to ignore. We waited 20 minutes before an officer called, saying nobody appeared to be home and he might need me to unlock the door. I gave him the code instead, and he called back 20 minutes later reporting no signs of anyone still being there. The next day we discovered the payment card was stolen, and after searching the house we found expensive decorations and appliances missing. I guess there never was a young couple to begin with. The one thing that remains unexplained is their plan with the water problem. I think they either wanted me to waive the charges so they could use the stolen card longer, or they planned to rob me at gunpoint. But that makes me wonder why they didn't go through with it. 3 dangerous strangers blocking my exit in a basement after luring me into a trap, and they just let me walk away. It makes no sense to me. After that incident, I never visited the house while guests were present, and a few months later we stopped using Airbnb altogether and put the house up for regular rent. Story 2. I'd never really had the chance to go on many vacations before, and when I did, it was always with family. This was my first time getting to enjoy somewhere new completely by myself. I know it sounds odd, but being alone suits me fine, especially since I never get to be alone otherwise. I researched both hotels and short-term rentals in the area, and surprisingly the rentals were much nicer and cheaper. However, all the affordable ones were further from the city center. Since I was driving my own car, I didn't mind traveling a bit to reach downtown, so I chose a well-sized rental. It was compact but had a nice kitchen and bedroom, which was all I really needed. I arrived at 6 on Sunday morning. The owner sent me the access code, and I brought all my belongings inside. It was really lovely, much better than the tiny apartment I shared with my roommate. Once everything was unpacked and organized, I collapsed on the couch and turned on the television. After a 10-hour drive, I was looking forward to relaxing for the night and enjoying some peace and quiet. I fell asleep pretty quickly, but since it was only around 7, my body naturally woke me up a few hours later. The time showed just past 10, and the TV was still running. I grabbed the remote and switched it off, then got up to get a glass of water before heading to the bedroom. As I walked from the living room toward the kitchen, I felt a strong cold breeze hit me. With my tired eyes, I glanced to my right and saw the front door standing wide open. My eyes snapped open, and my heart started pounding. I stared at the door for a moment, then scanned the room. I knew I had closed and locked it, so this was really alarming. I walked over to the door and closed it quietly, listening carefully for any sounds of someone being inside. For reference, I'm not the biggest guy around, but I am fairly tall and in decent shape, so unless an intruder had a weapon, I felt confident I could fight them off. I grabbed a kitchen knife, staying quiet, and walked room to room, checking every corner of the house. Nobody was there. This only puzzled me more, and I sent a message to the homeowner, asking if someone was supposed to visit tonight or something, explaining what had happened. It was late though, so I didn't expect an immediate response. I went around locking every door, then quickly searched the house again while more alert than before. Despite still being really tired, I went to bed and fell asleep without trouble. When I woke up though, I was much less calm than before. I heard something from outside. Not outside the house, but outside my bedroom door. I didn't know what to do and kind of froze, waiting for whoever was out there to make the first move. As I sat there in bed, I thought about how this person could have possibly gotten in. The only person who would have the door code was the homeowner. So honestly, in that moment, I was convinced it was him. This gave me more courage, thinking it must be some creepy guy who likes to spy on people staying at his rental. I got out of bed, still not having heard anything else, and grabbed my phone from the nightstand to call the police. I must have made too much noise though, because almost immediately someone started running away from the door toward the front of the house. That only frightened me more, knowing the intruder had been standing right outside the bedroom door the entire time. I dialed 911, but during the time it took for the police to arrive, nothing else happened. The person had left. I found a hotel to stay at for the rest of the vacation. But what's incredible is that the owner of the rental gave me a full refund after he was able to prove it wasn't him. He was very worried about it, and turned out to be a really nice elderly man. It was already creepy enough when I thought it was the owner, but knowing it was just some random person makes it even worse. I don't know how they got in or why they were watching me, but it still gives me chills thinking about it. The part I think about most is waking up and seeing that front door open. Now that I know someone was actually in the house, that means whoever it was came in and saw me asleep on the couch, then went ahead and did whatever they came there to do. It's just really disturbing and creepy, and makes me never want to stay at a rental alone again. Story 3. I was staying at a small 2-bedroom rental during a vacation last year. This place was on the route to another rental where I planned to spend the main part of my vacation, but this was more of just an overnight rest stop. The place was clean and empty just as expected when I arrived. I walked through the entire house to check it out before bringing in my luggage and settling on the couch. It was probably 8 in the evening by this time. As I sat there dozing off a little, the doorbell ringing made me jolt awake. I looked over at the front door, confused and alarmed. I was a pretty small young woman, so it's safe to say I get scared easily and don't like talking to strangers, especially at night when I'm alone. I got up and walked over to the door, hearing two men whispering to each other on the other side. The door didn't have a safety lock or anything, so I just kept it shut and called out to them. "Hello? Hey, we're here for the rental, can you open the door?" A man called out. I loudly asked what they meant, not understanding what being here for the rental was supposed to mean. He responded saying he had the place booked for the night. I knew there had to be some sort of mistake, so I told him, still yelling through the door, that I had it booked as well and that he needed to contact the owner. The man didn't seem happy about that, although if I were in his position, I'd be pretty upset too. I heard one set of footsteps walk away from the door, while the other man asked again if I could open the door so we could talk about it. I was about to give in, putting my hand on the doorknob, thinking he seemed believable, but something came over me telling me to just play it safe. I said my husband would be down to figure it out in a few minutes. I didn't want them to think I was alone, so I was hoping that would catch him off guard if something was wrong. The man didn't respond though. I waited for another minute, because I didn't hear any footsteps leaving. But then I moved the short curtain aside and looked out the small window. The man I'd seemingly been talking to was facing toward his car parked in the driveway, and beyond him was one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. A group of maybe 5 people was standing further down the driveway, kind of hiding as if waiting for a signal. They all had some form of face coverings, and I couldn't see the other side of the door, but I assumed there were even more people over there. Knowing this was very likely a gang due to the city I was staying in, I was completely horrified. I backed away from the door, fully panicked, and tried not to hyperventilate. I then went to the bedroom to get my phone and call the police, and I could hear more footsteps all around the house. It was like I was surrounded by a pack of wolves, who at any minute could smash the windows and break inside. I took my phone into the bathroom with me and called 911, trying to remain calm. The operator also told me to be quiet and stay calm as they were sending a unit my way. They would be there in just a few minutes. I stayed on the line, still hearing footsteps walking around outside the place, until the horrible sound of wood bending and then snapping came from the front door. I was crying heavily now, trying to muffle my mouth with my hand. I listened as a whole group of people ran inside, opening doors and cabinets, before one approached the bathroom door and tried the handle. "Here," he yelled, then walked away. The group continued looting the house before sirens were heard in the distance, and they began to scatter out of the place. They had all left by the time the police got inside, and all of my luggage was gone. My car had its windows smashed and was looted as well. One of the officers sat with me to discuss some details, and he informed me that they'd been having problems with large groups or gangs breaking into homes recently. They don't think the main goal is to hurt the residents at all, but rather to just rob them of everything,